Some children were loud. They laughed easily. Teachers noticed them. Parents praised them. People remembered them. But there was another child in the room, the quiet one, the one who didn't interrupt, didn't complain, didn't cause trouble. So most people assumed something simple. They're fine. But here's the strange part. The quiet child often noticed everything, while almost no one noticed them. And if that was you, there's a reason that silence followed you into adulthood. Imagine a classroom, 20 or 30 students, noise, movement, questions flying through the air. And somewhere near the back of the room sits a child who rarely raises their hand. Not because they don't know the answer. Sometimes they know it better than anyone. But they hesitate. They rehearse the sentence in their head first. Then they imagine how people might react. Then they wonder if the teacher is already tired of questions by the time they decide to speak. The moment has already passed, so they stay quiet. At home, something similar happens. Family conversations happen around them. Voices overlap. Opinions clash. The quiet child listens. They observe moods. They notice when someone is irritated. They notice when tension fills the room. So they learn something very early. Staying quiet keeps things calm. And slowly, without anyone explaining it, they begin shrinking themselves. Not physically, emotionally. Here's the part many people don't understand. Quiet children are rarely empty. They're usually full of thoughts, full of questions, full of emotions they don't quite know where to place. But when those thoughts aren't invited out, they stay inside. And when that happens long enough, the child learns an invisible rule. My voice probably doesn't matter that much. No one says it out loud. Silence teaches it. If you're quiet, adults rarely ask deeper questions. Teachers worry more about disruptive students. Parents focus on the loud problems. And the quiet child becomes easy. The easy child. The one who never causes trouble. The one who handles things well. But sometimes that's not strength. Sometimes it's loneliness in disguise. Pause for a moment. Think back. Were you ever called so mature for your age? At first, that sounds like a compliment, but sometimes it means something else. Sometimes it means the child learned to carry emotions alone. They didn't cry loudly. They didn't demand attention. They adapted. They observed. They became careful with their words. And eventually, careful with their needs. Something interesting happens to quiet children as they grow older. They become incredible observers. They can read small changes in tone, tiny shifts in facial expressions. They notice when someone says, "I'm fine," but isn't, because they spent years studying people, not from the center of the conversation, but from the edges. This is why many quiet adults are deeply empathetic. They feel what others feel, sometimes too much. And yet, they often struggle to express their own emotions clearly because they were never practiced at being heard. Let's look at a common moment. You are in a group conversation. Someone interrupts you halfway through your sentence. Most people would jump back in. But the quiet person, they stop. They smile politely. They say, "Never mind." And something small disappears again. Their thought, their voice, their moment. This happens again and again, until eventually speaking up feels unnatural. Even when you have something important to say. Even when you deserve to be heard. But here's a question that might change the way you see yourself. What if your quietness was never weakness? What if it was adaptation? A child who isn't given space to speak learns to listen. A child who isn't emotionally seen learns to study emotions. A child who feels unnoticed learns to move carefully through the world. That kind of awareness doesn't come from nowhere. It's built in silence, slowly, year after year. Now pause again for a moment. Ask yourself something honestly. Do you still feel invisible in certain rooms? Maybe at work, maybe in social groups, maybe even with family. You have thoughts, strong ones, but sometimes they stay inside your head longer than they should. And afterward you think, I should have said something. If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. Many quiet children grow into adults who carry an invisible habit. They wait for permission to exist in the conversation. But here's the twist most people never talk about. The quiet child didn't disappear. They adapted. And hidden inside that quietness is something powerful. Depth. The ability to think before speaking. The ability to understand people beyond their words. The ability to notice what others overlook. In a loud world, that kind of awareness is rare and valuable. The real problem was never your quietness. It was the assumption that quiet meant nothing was happening inside. But now you know better. And maybe, for the first time, you can start questioning that old rule. The one that said, stay small. Don't interrupt. Don't take up space. Those rules were written by a child trying to survive unnoticed. But you're not that child anymore. You're allowed to speak before the moment passes. You're allowed to finish your sentence. You're allowed to take up space in the room. Not loudly, not aggressively, just honestly. Because the quiet child everyone ignored often grows into the adult who understands the world more deeply than most. And maybe the real story was never about being invisible. Maybe it was about learning how much your voice actually matters once you finally decide to use it.